Good afternoon. Welcome to Tuesday Topics. I'm here today with Adam Fariss from Ironheart Winery, and we're going to talk about what it takes to be an entrepreneur. Adam, you've made some major life changes here. You want to talk a little bit about that?
I'm here. I guess
Well, you just came off of a great event this past weekend.
We did.
Okay.
So we had a bovine and wine in Fairlawn in the Kroger working parking lot with PJ and Brian, Big Rooster's Barbecue. We estimate 400 or 500 people came through. Of course, about 4 hours.
Wow.
And had a really fantastic event. It worked out really well.
And that was the first time you've done this?
Yep, a maiden voyage.
All right. So what inspired you to do that?
So our farm is a little bit off the beaten path, and we try to find ways to bring our product to the customer, or at least a closer outlet for them. So we built a mobile wine bar out of a vintage beer truck, and we're trying to take that to as many festivals and gatherings and outings as we can, and then try to stimulate some of our own events. And so partnering with other local entrepreneurs and businesses seems to be a good avenue to do that. So we can provide food and wine in some place that you may not expect it. And hopefully we plan to go to other parks and businesses throughout New River Valley to help put some shine some spotlight on some of those businesses as well. So if there are any other business owners that are interested in having a wine and food pairing event at their place of business, if you have a nice venue with parking and space for us to spread out, we'd be happy to do that.
I'll tell you what, that is brilliant marketing. Especially if you're having time getting the customers to you, you go to the customers.
Right.
So kudos to you on that. Tell me something. How long have you been at this? How long and how did it start?
So we started kicking around the idea of a winery in 2009. Some things transpired in our family that made us realize that we needed to make the farm economically sustainable around 2010. And so we started reading a lot, watching a lot of YouTube videos, attending some workshops about growing grapes and producing wine in spring of 2010, and put together a plan to try to utilize the farm with some short, medium, and long-range goals on how we could generate some revenue for the farm to be economically sustainable and to stay in the family for generations. So we planted our first grapes in the spring of 2010 with the intent of selling that fruit within 3 years to other wineries in the state of Virginia as a commercial vineyard. We initiated cabin rentals in some properties that we'd renovated on the farm that we had been renting long-term. We converted those to short-term cabin rentals to generate some short-term revenue. And the end goal was to have a functioning winery to sell finished wine. The time frame on that's a little longer. So we've been at it, long story short, to answer your question, about 9 years now.
Okay. So what made you decide to go into this full time? Because that's the big change right now. You've left a job and you are going into this full time. Is that scary?
It's terrifying. I've never been so anxious in my life when it comes to career planning. I've been with global Fortune 500 company for 13 years, and I've had a fantastic experience. But for me, I really wanted to focus on something that I could call my own, and I felt like I could use my imagination and my skill sets to the fullest if I ran a business with the family. It seemed like a really good idea 9 years ago, and it still seems like a good idea, but the hurdles and the requirements are very rigorous, and it's terrifying to think that shortly I'm going to have to be able to sustain my family based off of my own hustle. And so that I'm hoping that it will be as rewarding emotionally as I think that it will be.
It
but
sounds
it's terrifying.
exciting. It's exciting though. And that drive, I caught a post that you made about a week ago. You were up at 2 in the morning doing some photo shoots of the wine.
Yeah.
So it's 24/7.
Yeah, it never stops. And if you take a week off, then you're a week behind because there's nobody to do the task that you're doing yourself as a small business owner. And so that's going to take some getting used to. There's no paid vacation. if you're away from the helm,
Right.
and things are going to kind of stagnate. And there's also, you can't delegate everything to other people because you don't have those resources all the time. So we had a customer that asked for some very specific photos by the next day so they could add them to an online catalog. And we had to make do. So we built a light box, and at midnight it was dark in the rest of the room. And so,
you went
that's
for
the
it.
exciting part though. So from
Okay.
a small business entrepreneurship perspective, like all those different facets are what keep me intrigued. So it's not the same task every day. There are a lot of those, but then being able to do some weird things or some different exciting things, I think that's what really keeps me engaged.
We've come up with some really unique marketing strategies, like your labels
Yep.
of women.
Yep.
You want to tell us about that?
Sure. So in the planning process over the last 9 years, we really wanted to look at our business from a very business mechanics perspective. So the financial piece, the marketing piece, all the way down to packaging and planning. We've been talking about that for years. I spent hours on the Kroger wine aisle taking pictures, walking back and forth and observing the different label artwork, and found that the labels that are on the wine aisle frequently they resemble one another. Embossed foil print, heavyweight paper, watermarks, very regal images, landscapes, animals, but no real people, and almost no women or real women. And so we came back and looked and said, well, how can we fill that void in the retail space if we ever make it to the shelf? So we're not even on many grocery store shelves yet, but we're hoping that one day we will.
Right.
And then we also read a bunch of trade journals about how people make decisions in the marketplace based on bold colors, maximizing the label claim, vivid artwork. Then we had a conversation with a cousin that said, well, what makes your winery different? Why are people going to choose to come here over the other 286 wineries in the state? And we couldn't answer that question. But after thinking about it more and more, the history of Southwest Virginia and our farm specifically being a boom town where they mined iron from 1882 to 1906, that history is what we love about the farm, and we found that's what others love about the farm. And then my great-grandmother was widowed at the age of 41 with 8 children and raised 8 of the wildest people you ever heard in your life by herself. And so we wanted to tell the story of our farm and the family through our branding and its artwork. So we have labels that are railroad themed, mining themed, with Rosie the Riveter as a throwback to my great-grandmother who did whatever it took to keep the family together
That's
through
awesome.
the Great Depression. So that artwork it really tells a story. And if you watch our labels from 2016 through now, you'll see that there's a progression in the artwork that's going to tell the story of how the farm kind of evolved. And so we want to really use those images on our bottles to communicate about our story to the customer.
That is fantastic. You know, if you were going to give advice to anybody, you've put a lot of thought and you've gone all different ways between marketing, financing, you know, the history, everything. You've looked over the overall picture. If you were going to advise somebody else, a young entrepreneur, to get started in a business, what would you tell them?
I wish I had all the answers because I don't. I mean, we are still kind of in the fledgling phase of this. But I think that planning is very important. And you really have to put your ducks in a row to make sure that things are going to be viable, whether it be from marketing, from the financial side. But what's been key to me is to maintain focus on the customer. So if you can ensure that the person that is at the end of the value chain who picks up and consumes that bottle of wine is having the best possible experience they can, whether it be packaging, wine quality, the way the glass feels in their hand if we're selling them the glass. If you can maximize the customer experience, I believe that the other pieces will fall into place a little easier.
All right. It's all about the customer.
Yes, ma'am.
You've got it down. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for coming in.
Yeah,
Maybe
thank you.
we'll come back and talk about some other things.
Absolutely.
I'd like to talk more about the marketing and the history on the labels and things. I think that's really cool. Okay, thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next month on Tuesday Topics.
Thank you.